what are we to make of the example of the poor widow who gives away everything she owns today? That's exactly what the scriptures possess to us today. They ask us, what are we to do? Because we all need to realize that the scriptures invite us to prayer, to holiness, to stewardship. Because when we understand that our discipleship concerns our entire life, as opposed to what we do on a Sunday, or maybe in an hour or two of service here or there in our lives, then money simply becomes one of the many gifts we cultivate and share in our stewardship. And so in opening up and responding to God's words today, we verify the truth of what St. Francis of Assisi always thought. It is in giving that we receive. I want to share with you a simple story. It was Sunday. As usual, Mary came to church. She came every Sunday, but for some reason she was really affected by the scriptures that were proclaimed that day. She knew the reason why. She could really identify with the woman in the scriptures. She too was a widow, and times were hard and difficult for her. Mary's husband had died less than a year. His tragic, unexpected death thrust Mary upon a role which she was totally unprepared for: the household manager. Her husband had always taken care of the money, and that was fine with her. The weekly check for the church was part of the budget. There was never any discussion about it. Well, this Sunday, however, Mary was filled with a variety of questions. Suddenly, she was the widow in the gospel. The collection basket was being passed among the congregation, and Jesus and his disciples were watching. Well, Mary fumbled with her purse, found the collection envelope. As she pulled it out, a $5 bill also came with it. She had also almost forgotten about that extra $5 that she had hidden away. She had been saving it to give her son a special treat on his birthday. She had so many other ways to use it, but she always resisted. Now, as she looked at her 6-year-old son seated next to her, then at the money, she was on the verge of tears. As much as she would have liked to, she could not forget the words of Jesus in the gospel. She gave from her want all that she had to live on. What was he asking of her, she thought? Did the sudden appearance of the $5 have any significance? The collection basket was in front of her. Mary paused, then made her decision. What was her decision? That's what I'd like you all to decide. I'm not going to tell you. What decision do you think Mary came to? What decision should she have come to? Because when we hear about the widow in the gospel today, because we hear the story, religious leaders of Israel, the scribes, the teachers practicing true religion. Their acts of worship, as we know, is only for show and outward appearance. They like the honor, the prestige, the respect that comes from who they are and the positions that they have. But they fail to live the justice and love which are the true marks of faith. They fail to understand discipleship and a call to live true stewardship. And then in contrast, we find that it is the poor woman the widow, who is willing to give up her life for her faith. She represents all those who, without show or public display, quietly attempt to live out the deeper meaning of the gospel. And so who are we to judge? That is between God and each one of us. What counts, though, is not external signs and show, but rather the inner faith that lives and dwells within each and every one of us. The inner faith that attempts at responding and carrying out what Jesus asks of us in the gospel. What we all need to do is to become a good steward. What we all need to do is to become a true disciple of Christ. The scriptures remind us that God loves and accepts the gifts that we give of ourselves, even when you and I feel it is given from our poverty and our need. And like the widow, we often feel that we have little to bring to Christ in terms of our own resources. And it is that gift, what we have, what we are, which gives God praise. Because what we have, what we give, is what God accepts of all of us. Because when one understands that discipleship concerns our entire life, our very being, as to just coming on a Sunday to prayer, or on a Saturday night, or just to give time in ministry and service, when money simply becomes just a gift that we cultivate from the extra that we have, then we're missing what God is asking of us. How we use what we have been given reflects our understanding of what discipleship is all about, our attitude toward money, towards our brothers and sisters, towards the poor. The widow today gives her last 2 coins in St. Mark's Gospel. It speaks to us about her spirituality. It's not just about her pocketbook. And I'm sure we can assume that her generosity didn't just end right there, that it was extended to others around her. Because good stewards understand what it means to give of oneself for the good of their brothers and sisters. And that's what we need to do. Because what we give is important. What we use our finances for is important. And so buying clothes for children, trips to the grocery store, paying or treating a friend to lunch, those are good ways of exercising stewardship. What we give to the poor, what we give to our church, those are good examples of faithful and true disciples and stewards of God. Because if we focus on any of the gifts too often, too much, then we miss out on what God is asking of us. Because our goal as an everyday steward is to be just like the widow, giving what God called her to give and not counting it as a loss. The call for all of us can be time, money, prayer, skills, gifts, talents, compassion, and so much more. What the key is our response, our transformation, our change, our giving. The reason for telling you that story about Mary was hopefully to enliven in all of us a way to react to the scriptures. Is there ever an absolute answer to why Jesus used the widow today as an example? I don't think so. He would not, however, have pointed her out to his disciples if he didn't want them to think about who she was and what her actions were. Jesus was preparing them for the unknown, for the future. And so Jesus said he came into the world not to condemn it, but to save it. He spent his life trying to show all of us that there shouldn't be a conflict between our values and the gospel values. As his followers, you and I, that is our duty. But we cannot give what we do not have, and we cannot teach gospel values if we do not live them. We will never learn to live them until we start to listen carefully to the scriptures and apply them to our everyday lives, as the widow in the gospel, as Mary did in her own life. And so let us take a moment to respond to the scriptures. Let us put it into action. Let us celebrate our faith, and let us give joyfully to the Lord as he calls and asks of us. The Lord invites us. What will we do? It's a choice we all make. May we give with generous hearts, for the Lord is with us.